We all want to make a difference. We all want to matter a little bit. And most of us would like to contribute in some way, either to the world or to somebody else's life. Today I'm going to talk about peace of mind and how that's a good thing to have a beginning where you are grounded and solid and at peace with yourself so that you can do good work, you can reach out, you can contribute, and you can make a difference. I was afraid to return a new pair of shoes to Nordstrom with a receipt. That is pitiful, but to me that was conflict. I had a pretty big career, managing hundreds of people, millions of dollars. It was all good. I was great at doing things for other people, not so much for myself. So I had a year contract to revitalize a paper, a small paper that wanted to be sold. At the end of the year, the president called me into her office and gave me my final check, no problem. And when I asked about the bonus, she said, oh, well, you'll have to speak to our attorney about that. So the next day, went to Century City, big office, big table, very imposing, and sat down on the other side of the table, had my numbers, how you doing, everything's fine. And he said, well, we're just not going to be able to pay that bonus. So, gee, I don't really get that because this, and this accomplishments. He said, well, we're just not going to be able to pay it. Now, you've heard about the fight or flight reaction to things. Well, the one you may not know is the freeze one, and that's the one I did. All I can remember from that day is riding the elevator down to the garage, being somewhere on the freeway driving home, and I got home and I never spoke about leaving $15,000 on the table. I didn't tell anybody, I didn't talk about it, I just ate it, so to speak. And I didn't discuss it with anybody for quite a few years. So, cutting to starting this business. Having the peace of mind and comes from the security of knowing that no matter what happens, you can handle yourself and that you can be part of a solution. What actually happened is that changed my life is that my husband's a professor at Pepperdine, and he happened to know the dean of the law school, and we were having dinner, and the Strauss Institute had just been founded. And so Janet didn't really know me, and she said, I think that I really want you to meet Peter and Randy, who are the people starting it, because they are terrific, and I think you would really like them. And the name of the institute was Dispute Resolution. In about 18 months, I had gone through the program and got a master's, and that experience changed my life because, first of all, I really needed help, but I learned the skills and then used them and then got confident because I discovered they worked. So let's talk a little bit about how you can do that, because really, if I can do that, you can do that. Now, probably not everybody here is as afraid of conflict as I was, but maybe some of you don't like it. So first we'll talk about a few skills, and then we'll talk about how to use them, and then we'll talk about your questions. Because, when something really, really changes your life, the idea that you can not have to worry is pretty priceless. First of all, you need to know yourself, right? Because that's where the roots are. That's where the grounding is. That's sort of the stake in the ground. When you really know who you are and why things are important to you. So one of the ways to articulate and clarify what that really means for you, 4 questions. What is a good person? What is a good life? What is good work? And what is a good relationship? So if I say to you, what is a good person? What's one word that comes to mind? Integrity. So, if you're thinking about being a good person, having integrity is really important because, part of being a good person is being a trustworthy person. And being a trustworthy person is really important because, okay, you get the idea? So you kind of test your ideas for a while. So what happens at the end of all that is that you really know who you are, what matters to you, and why. And those are really, really strong roots. Now, why does that matter? So, because when you get in conflict and somebody's pushing on you, it's like, well, I don't know about that, but what I do know is this. What I do know is what matters to me. What I do know is that this is important and this is why. So that who are you when nobody's looking, you really know. Now, the second big skill is emotional intelligence. It's really about self-awareness, like feeling your feelings and knowing what they are and being able to differentiate between mad and sad and glad. And they're different, by the way. A lot of people will say they're upset. I don't know, what does that mean? You have an upset stomach, you're angry, you're scared. That's not a helpful word. So the other part is you can regulate yourself, your behavior. So just because you're angry, you don't get to kick the cat. You can't do it, it's bad, right? So lots of people give themselves permission to act out or to throw a tantrum or to say things and do things, just because they're upset. And if you're in business, really any time in life, but if you're in business, you can do yourself a lot of damage by not being able to regulate your behavior. So knowing yourself, being able to feel your feelings, know what they are, and then regulate your behavior allows you to have empathy for other people. That you can imagine what it might be like for somebody else to be how they are, even though it may look nutty or it may be problematic, right? It's easier for you to not get a blurred boundary because that person's being nutty and it's not about you. The third skill, mate skill, is communication. Now, if you think about this, it's really hard to communicate clearly if you don't know what you mean. Right? So anybody who's ever tried to write anything, when you look at the page and it doesn't really make any sense, it's because there's a thinking problem, right? You, the lawyer, know that, right? Why, just last night I was writing a brief, right? So if you don't know what you mean, you certainly can't communicate it. So then the other piece is understanding that the whole purpose of communication is understanding. So to be understood and to understand the other person, because that, my friends, is power. There's a difference between the word react and respond. So the idea is, instead of reacting when you get aggravated, to be able to think, and make a choice about how you want to handle yourself and the situation. Okay, so now how are we going to use those skills? First of all, realize that conflict situations are usually, it's not an event, right? It's usually going to be a process of conversations. And when you understand how to have a conversation well, you're going to be better at resolving a conflict. There's a rule about conflict that says quickly, while it's little, before it escalates, right? The sooner the better. So people who think that they're going to deal with it later or that it's going to evaporate, conflicts are not like steam. They don't just evaporate, they actually wait for you and they will collect. And then you get a whole big pile of stuff. And you've probably been on the receiving end of somebody who was mad about 3 things that happened this week, and it lands in your lap. So if there's a history in there that's been dangerous or hurtful or problematic, you're going to get triggered. And so the trick is to be able to slow things down so you have a moment to think before you react. People don't listen so well when they're in a hurry to speak. So if you let the other person talk first, a couple good things happen. 1, you show them respect. 2, you get to learn. 3, when they're finished, if you have the patience to actually wait, they're more available to listen to you. When you now have information, you have your little roots in the ground, you're all calm and clear. Now you want to start with the end and you want to think, is this a situation that really, I don't want to burn this bridge, so I need to handle this in a good way. So there's kind of a long-term situation, and then there's the immediate situation of that interaction or that conversation. So always being specific about what specifically would you like to have happen as a consequence of this conversation. And when you start doing that, you will be much, much, much more effective, because you will be solving problems, right? You'll be getting answers. The other thing is that all you can do is all you can do, right? You can't change other people, you can't guarantee outcomes. So the idea, again, is to be your best, to do your side of the street or your side of the conversation as well and effectively and cleanly and respectfully as possible. That's all you can do. And then when you know what you know, then you can let it go, right? You can say really hard things to people, here's the rule, if you don't surprise them. Because people, when they get surprised, are not their best, because they're like this. Only say something that you know is true. So don't assume, don't exaggerate, don't make stuff up. Only if you don't know it for yourself that it's true, don't say it, just leave it out. Okay. The third piece is, don't have a hard conversation with somebody unless you are prepared to be kind and respectful. You don't have to like them, you don't have to agree, but you do need to show respect and regard, because the person's a human being. And a side piece is, most of the hard conversations you have are with people that you know. 9.5 times out of 10, whatever you're going to say is probably not news. They already know there's a problem. They already know something about what you're going to talk about. So being able to solve the right problem is a big deal, because that's how you keep relationships clean, and that's how you're available to be close, because you know where you stand, there's honesty, trust, all that good stuff. The point of this whole thing, this whole talk, this whole idea about contributing and being passionate and making a difference is that the freedom that you get by knowing yourself and by not having to worry about being surprised. Because once you know this stuff about yourself, once you have those roots in the ground, even if you get surprised, you're still you. You still know how to take a deep breath. You still know how to slow things down. You still know how to be willing to listen to the other person to understand. You still know that stuff. Now, I'm not saying it's always easy. Lots of times it's not easy. But once you really know these skills, you can, if you have to plan to have a hard conversation that you know is going to be difficult, great. Or if somebody surprises you, like my lawyer friend, you know what to do. So the point is that learning how to do this is possible. It's not rocket science, it's not brain surgery, they're skills. And if I can learn them from that place, you can learn them too. And you'll be fine. And the freedom that comes from not having to worry or be on guard is priceless. So, thank you very much. Go and make a difference, and have fun.